So now that we've finished tier 1 of our lace pattern, I'm going to go ahead and put a lifeline on my stitches so that if something would happen and in tier 2 something would go wrong, I can pull back to this last row that I know that was absolutely correct. In order to add that lifeline, we're going to need a couple things. The first thing we're going to need is a blunt tipped darning needle. The second thing we're going to need is a length of waste yarn. My favorite waste yarn to use is something that's slick. This is mercerized cotton thread that's usually used for crochet, like doily crochet. It's fine enough that it won't disrupt your stitches, shouldn't upset your gauge. It's smooth enough that it will slide right out when you're done with it. And it is undyed, which means that if something would happen and this would get wet, there's no color that's going to come out of the cotton onto your work. You can pick up these balls, giant balls, for just a couple bucks at a craft store, and this will be lifelines for a lifetime for you. So I highly recommend getting a ball of this crochet cotton thread for your lifelines. So what we're going to do is simply pull up a loop, grab it with the end of our needle. That makes threading our needle much easier. Pull that through. I like to keep about 6 inches of a tail to hang on to. And then very simply, we're going to take our work and follow the path of our cable that connects our circular needle tips and draw this yarn right through those stitches that are on our circular needle. One thing to note, if you're using stitch markers, like I am here, if you run your needle and your crochet cotton thread through your stitch marker, that means your stitch marker is going to be attached to this crochet cotton and will not be able to come off of your needle and move. So we don't want that, because eventually it'll start distorting things, or it can pull your lifeline out. So we're going to take our needle out, jump over this stitch marker, not put the cotton through it, and then we're going to continue on down our cable. Just like this, making sure you don't split a stitch or split the yarn. And we're going to follow the path of our circular needle right through our work. And if you notice, I skipped the stitch marker on this edge as well. So see, the needle is not passing through that stitch marker. I'm going to go ahead and pull my needle all the way through the other side of the work, keeping an eye on my other edge. Pull that needle free. And now we have a lifeline here at the end of that first chart that will allow us to drop back very easily if we need to at a later time. And I'm going to show you what that looks like, because the lifeline is going to hold all of our stitches in place, so it's not going to be dramatic to say, you know, tug on my needle, grab that, see how this is still free. So here I've taken all of those stitches off the needle, and the lifeline is going to hold them for me so that they don't run. If your needle gets pulled out of your work inadvertently, a lifeline will give you a definite point that will help you build from as you put your stitches back on your needle. Also, if something happened and we made a mistake, it's very easy to take your needle out of the work and just pull the yarn back out, and all your stitches at a set point in your chart are going to be sitting right here waiting for you to pick them back up. The only trick is going to be this yarn over. There's a yarn over right here. When you bring your needle tip back, it's important that you follow the path of the yarn and not just grab the yarn that looks like it's on top. You see how this strand of yarn right here is not actually what the string is going through. That's actually a row below what we want. So we're going to take our needle tip, follow that path right where the cotton goes. That's why I like to use white, something that contrasts nicely with your project yarn. And I don't knit a lot of white, so white is perfect for me. And we're just going to gently scoot these stitches right back on. And I have a 3-stitch garter edge in this pattern. So there I've put my stitch marker back in its designated spot. And we've picked up all of those stitches that we had previously accidentally dropped off of our needle. That's how you can add a lifeline to your work. So now we're ready to continue knitting on our pattern. Our next row is an increase row, so you're going to see lots of yarn overs in the work at this point. But I do want to point out, now that you continue to work, you're just going to ignore this lifeline. So you can see we've already started knitting into the row. We've got a good amount of tail hanging out of our lifeline. It's not going to go anywhere. So I'm going to continue to knit as if that lifeline isn't even there. And you can see here at this point, the lifeline is kind of wrapped around the needle. That's no problem. We're just going to continue to pretend it isn't there. We are going to make sure that our needle tip doesn't catch it. So this is a little tricky. Sometimes it's helpful. You can just slide that lifeline to the back of your needle to make it easier to make sure that you don't grab it with your needle tip. Let's say that we accidentally did grab the lifeline with our needle tip. It would look like this. You can see my lifeline now has gone up and over into that stitch, and it's no longer sitting on this stitch like normal. If that happens, just back that stitch back off your needle, and you can kind of tug that extra slack out of your lifeline by coming down here and giving a little tug. And now we can continue to work around that lifeline as if it doesn't exist. And here, I'm just going to slide that to the back. Make it easier to be sure that I don't pick it up on my working needle as I continue to work. Now we have that nice straight lifeline right through our stitches, hanging out there in case that we need it. Happy knitting!